Hello, CFUV listeners, and welcome to another edition of Climate Jam, a series of interviews on solutions to climate change. My name is Jason Grenier, and I have been creating this series with the support from the BCSEA organization, which is the BC Sustainable Energy Association. They are an organization with chapters all over BC that advocate sustainable use and energy production in BC. Their website, bcsea.org. Today I have with me for a second interview the founder of the BCSEA, Guy Dauncey, to talk about his latest webinar where Beat Fischer will be presenting from Germany on 100% renewable energy regions. The BCSEA produces one webinar a month where a variety of people from city councillors, educators, business leaders, heads of all sorts of organizations, and regular folks like myself attend. You can sign up for upcoming webinars or listen to past webinars by going to bcsea.org. So, Guy, thank you for joining me again today.
Great, Jason. Yep.
So, why webinars?
Well, it's part of the new wave of technology. If it's possible, we can do it. So really, the webinar outfit that we use, which is called GoToMeeting, allows for a very smooth interface so that people can log onto their computer and have basically a live, real-time presentation, the same that you would go if you went to a lecture hall, and then have the chance to ask questions and have discussions with the speaker. And this gives us the advantage that we can have speakers from all over British Columbia and, in fact, all over the world who don't need to travel here and, take 3 or 4 days and burn up carbon emissions or stuff like that to do a decent presentation. So Beata Fischer, coming for our webinar this coming Wednesday, is from the German city of Kassel, for instance. And she'll be presenting from her computer at 9 o'clock in the evening, which will give us a noon lunchtime presentation here in British Columbia.
Perfect. And that will be what time? You said 9 o'clock in the evening?
It's 12 noon next Wednesday. It's noon till 1. We run a very tight ship, exactly like a radio broadcast. We start on time and end on time. But it's live. You can actually interact and ask questions with the speaker after she's done her presentation.
Excellent.
And we always encourage our speakers to be as visual as possible with the images they use, because it's a visual medium, the webinar. And there's no cost to this; it's free. You just have to sign up and log on, and then when you sign up, you're sent all the details, and you just click the link, and off you go.
Sounds easy to use. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you tell us about? I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correctly.
Beata Fischer.
Beata Fischer.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about her?
Well, yeah. She's working with the project on 100% renewable energy regions, or let me try this in Germany for the fun of it, Erneuerbare Energieregion. How's that? And in Germany, there are, let me get my numbers here, 136 regions of Germany that have made the commitment to use 100% renewable energy for electricity and transport and heating. So none of them has got there yet. But there are 73 that are full commitment, and there are 60 starter regions, and there are 3 urban areas that have made the commitment, covering 26% of Germany's population. Mm-hmm. And so really this is a very profound move. It's not just electricity they're talking about. It's the whole schmoodle.
Now, in this webinar, are you going to be talking about technologies? Or are you going to be talking about what I'm trying to get at is that my listeners have told me that they think that we're past talking about technologies and that we need to be talking about how do we do it, how do we implement it. And I would be very interested to know, how did these German communities get organized and do this?
Yeah, and that's what I will be interested to know as well, and that's why I'm keen to hear what she has to say. Now, you can't separate the technology from the policy and the measures needed to get there. So the technologies are basic wind, solar, biomass type technologies, which are used to create electricity and fuel and heat. But the policies and the motivational forces, really, the partnerships that the organizations have to put together, the teams, the energy management people, there's a complexity of the partnerships, and there's complexity of the supportive legislation. So I know, for instance, that Germany has a feed-in tariff, which means that people supplying solar or wind energy or biofuel energy or every kind of renewable energy to the grid are given a guaranteed price per kilowatt hour. And having a guaranteed price over a long-term 20-year contract is what investors need to risk the money, because their money is safe, and that's what investors like. And that's what's allowed Germany to make such good progress with both solar and wind energy. Now, here in British Columbia, we don't have a similar policy, because our electricity is already 95% zero carbon because it's coming from hydro and wind energy. But we have no active policies in British Columbia, or frankly anywhere in Canada, to address the systematic problems of heating. Instead of using oil and gas to heat, how do you get heat from renewable energy, and how do you get transport without using oil and gas? So those are the things they're addressing as well.
Do you think that the recent situation with what's going on with Russia and shutting off the gas to Europe is going to push forward this renewable energy?
I mean, Germany's got several drivers. The first driver was actually their desire to shut down their nuclear power plants. And then the second driver was the big concern on climate change. And the third driver is definitely their dependency on Russia for their gas. And, so they've made a big drive on looking at how much biogas they can get from farm wastes and things like that. And they're motivated.
Now, how much involvement does the German government have in these renewable projects? Is it more community-based?
I think, these are the questions that I'm wanting to seek myself, but they're definitely regional-based. They're not like a local town. These are regions, as opposed to one little farm village. I mean, I look at the map that I'm looking at right now, and, it looks like, a third of all of Germany is under one of these regions. In fact, that's correct. It's 30% of Germany is within one of these regions. So it's regional governments, city governments, local utilities, and then the business companies and investors who can actually install the technology that are the partners here. And part of this is linked to demand reduction. So, if you can reduce your electrical demand reduction by 50%, it's that much easier to supply the power. If you can reduce the power needed for transport and the energy needed for heating by emphasizing green buildings, energy efficiency. So I think you'll find they're all working on that kind of way.
That's interesting how you say it's the regions that are the partners. It's the lower governments like the city governments, and it's not the federal governments or the provincial governments, because
I don't know enough about Germany to know how a provincial government in Canada compares to a regional government in Germany, because they're a federation, the same as Canada is, and all energy policy in Canada is governed at the provincial level. And I don't know how true that is. I mean, of course, Germany is like 70-80 million people compared to our 4.5 million people.
Yeah.
But clearly there's a lot of decentralization in the way they go about this.
What I was going to get at is, I guess, if we wanted to do something similar to what Germany is doing, we have to start getting involved in the community and working with our city councilors and not rely too much on provincial and federal.
No, I would disagree with that. If you break it down, so electricity, frankly, we don't need to worry about. It's 95%. Well, my big concern is climate change. So our electricity is 95% zero carbon already, and the solar revolution will reach British Columbia by the year 2020, and so that will start increasing. For transportation, we're fundamentally talking about one big shift towards electric vehicles, for which we need federal and provincial support to get all the charging stations. And we also need massive infrastructure in safe off-road cycling lanes for which we need municipal and city support, as you say, and we also need a big investment in transit, for which we need TransLink support, which is a kind of halfway between the city and the province. And all of those pieces need putting into the picture. So if we're going to just take transportation, how do we change all our transportation so that no cars need to burn oil?
Mm-hmm.
And no one's using natural gas in vehicles either. So fundamentally, you could say, well, just change every car to electric vehicle, and you could do that. But it makes a lot more sense to simultaneously change a lot of the transport over to cycling and to transit. Because, I mean, you could have everyone in an electric vehicle, and here in Victoria, we'd still have, the massive morning rush hour with people driving in from Ladysmith in their electric vehicles, and people will still be frustrated. So it makes more sense to think about the transportation, like how do we have electric buses? There are electric buses on the road right now with fast recharging at the end of the run. Can we have electric long-distance luxury coaches? It's totally possible. Can we have electric LRT? It's totally possible.
Now, as far as electric cars are concerned, There's a huge ratio. I can't remember which country it was in Europe, and comparing to BC, BC has just about 1,000 cars that are electric.
Yeah, you're talking about Norway. I mean, I wrote a piece for the BC Sustainable Energy Association on this last week, comparing British Columbia to Norway. We have a very similar population. We have very similar green power. They're 100% green power. We're 95%. We have a very similar mountainous, rocky terrain. But we have 1,000 electric vehicles, and they have 30,000. They are getting 1,000 new electric vehicles every month because they have such a generous package of incentives, which, not only do they pay tax on vehicles in Norway, so they don't have to pay any tax, but also electric cars get free parking throughout the country. They can ride in the bus lanes. They get free ride on the ferries, and they don't have to pay any road tolls. And on top of the financial incentives, of course, as soon as you drive an electric vehicle, you're saving money. So right now, a regular vehicle, if you're driving 15,000 kilometers a year or something like that, you're paying about $130 a month.
Yeah.
And electric vehicle is $10 a month. So that's every month you're saving $120. So there's a financial saving purely by moving to electric vehicles.
The incentive that we used to have here in BC,
the $5,000 incentive for purchase,
is gone.
It's all run out. The government put up a fixed pool of money, and when it's finished, it's gone, and they're not. The current government seems to have no interest in green energy or climate change or anything like that. They're totally stuck on natural gas. And I'm wanting to revive some sort of campaign to get them back interested in restoring the funding, because if we gave a similar proportion of our GDP, which is as Norway does, of our annual budget rather, of the government's budget, in Norway they give 0.045% of their budget in electric vehicle support. So if we did the same, it'd be about $20 million a year. And that would support an incentive program. And the other thing I'd make different is that I'd be interested in giving some of the incentive to the electric vehicle dealers. Because right now, people who tried to buy an electric vehicle found the dealers very frustrating. They didn't understand them. It took them longer to do it, so they weren't motivated. And they just were unhelpful, to put it mildly.
Yeah,
so if they could be motivated.
You're saying it's hard to get if you want one, it's hard to get in BC.
Yeah, the dealers are not well informed and they're not motivated. And they just don't know how the cars work.
Yeah.
So, normally what I've heard is that the people going to buy the electric vehicles know more about them than the dealer does.
Right, yeah.
And so the dealers need to get up to speed. They think, well, we're selling so few, it doesn't matter. But if they were selling more, they had an incentive to sell them, that would change things. So that needs provincial involvement. We're never going to see cities putting up that kind of $5,000, and it wouldn't make any sense because people from Prince George will go down to Vancouver, get the incentive, and go back to Prince George. And so it doesn't. You've got to do it provincially, and really you've got to do it federally. That makes far more sense to do it federally.
The interesting thing that we should mention is that the fossil fuel cars and oil has been subsidized since I think I read World War I or World War II.
Well, the the oil industry is subsidized.
Mm-hmm.
So indirectly, the price of oil is cheaper than it might be. It is taxed. I mean, it's taxed considerably, but only half as much. So if we pay $1.30 a litre here, in Europe they're paying $2.60 a litre because they pay more tax on it. And it's also subsidized because no one is paying for the externalized environmental cost of oil. And at one level, that's the air pollution, it's the cancer, it's the asthma. Another level, it's the oil spills, it's the polluted rivers, it's the sea creatures, it's the Amazon rainforest being torn down. And a third level, it's the incredible impact of climate change that's going to devastate us unless we stop burning fossil fuels really quickly. So the oil industry has got a free ride on all of those things, and that means every motorist has a free ride.
Yeah.
I remember a statistic that basically if we were paying the full cost of oil, gasoline for our cars, it would be $5 a litre, not $1.30.
Right.
And that would really motivate people to think, because instead of $130 dollars a month, you're paying now $500 a month on gasoline, gas for your car.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly people would say, how do I ride share? How do I get an electric vehicle?
Yeah.
Why isn't there a decent transit system? Why isn't there a safe bike lane? Can I get an electric bike? All those questions have been motivated. So yes, you're absolutely right. We are subsidizing the destruction of our civilization indirectly by the continued use of fossil fuels. And we can turn around at the real simple switch of some policy and willingness. But the current government in Ottawa is more interested in promoting the very same fossil fuels and almost like crying wolf that if we don't get behind the tar sands, the pipelines, our economy will be in a tragic mess.
Yeah.
And they couldn't be more wrong. It's the absolute opposite, That will cause the tragic mess.
Well, they just gave the go-ahead for the pipeline.
Well, exactly, yes. And they're luckily the public's not buying it, but their line is a kind of economic blackmail that if we don't support the pipeline, we're going to lose jobs and the economy will collapse and there'll be terrible disasters. And it's just not true, because you can either have an economic drive that supports fossil fuels and pipelines and tar sands, or an economic future based on renewable energy, sustainable transport, zero energy buildings, public transit, decent cycling, clean air, clean cities, and all the money spent on renewable energy stays within the province and circulates locally, creating demand, which creates jobs. Whereas when you have to import oil, it leaves the province and goes somewhere else. And globally, it's all ending up in Saudi Arabia and Norway, I should say.
Yeah. Well, we're fast running out of time, so do you just want to give a quick reminder of the
webinar?
I
think the important thing about these webinars is that some people say you're preaching to the choir, but any choir has to be trained and has to have choir practice. And when you know about these systems and you know what they're doing in Germany, when you write letters to your politicians and you talk to people, you can be so much more better informed. So the webinar it's titled Germany's Path to 100% Renewable Energy Regions. It is next Wednesday, 12 noon. And to register, you just go to BCSEA.org and click on Events. And in the events page of that, you'll see the details for the webinar, and you can log on.
Yeah, and when you say next Wednesday, you're talking June 25th.
Wednesday, June the 25th.
All right, then.
Correct. Okay,
well, I thank you for joining me, and I'll speak with you again soon.
It was bcsea.org/, then click on Events. And that's great, Jason. I look forward to talking to you again.